and welcome back to the lab. This is the second video in our look at the PS1 original, or the original PlayStation 1 security. In the first video we talked about how it was implemented, and we talked about the process through which it was defeated. We did touch on how in 2020 to effectively mod one of these consoles, because they are still awesome for homebrew. The games are starting to get a bit expensive, so protecting your investment is very important. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go ahead and install a mod chip into this PS1, and then we're going to verify that the installation is successful. Now, full disclosure, I managed to loan my only FTDI cable out, so I'm going to have to use an Arduino Uno as an FTDI cable. Actually, Domino Love as an FTDI cable. But if you have the FTDI cable, this will be a lot simpler for you. I'm just going to connect in, and as you can see, I have pulled the chip out, which just allows me to use the raw FTDI and pull off the pins and go to the Pro Mini. Now, as I just mentioned, what we're using as a mod chip for the PlayStation 1 is a Pro Mini Arduino. This is based on the ATmega 328P microcontroller. They're generally less than $1 a piece and pretty easy to work with. It can be programmed with the Arduino IDE and an FTDI cable. So we're going to go ahead and again use my Arduino Domino Love as an FTDI cable because I loaned it to my boss. So, dismantling Sony consoles is a fairly straightforward process. They are nice enough to put arrows on every level of the console where there's a screw to take out. They're not like Nintendo. They don't use any stupid security screws. I hate the tri-lobe stuff. So we're just going to go ahead and remove the 6 screws on the bottom of the console. None are hidden behind stickers. There really is no warranty void seal on these, so not that after for a console made in 1999 that there's any kind of warranty left on it, but and the top just comes off. If you ever operate this without the top on, this power supply has mains voltage exposed all the time. I tend not to play with it. There's a couple of rather beefy capacitors on here, and while I am sure that Sony would have been smart enough to put bleed resistors in so that they don't stay charged forever, I'm not going to play that game. So you're first confronted with the console the way it sits now. The next piece that I usually take off is the CD-ROM itself. You have this data ribbon cable, which you obviously want to be careful with because those flex cables are very, very fragile. Annoying, very annoying. And a 4-pin connector here for power. Why 4 pins? I don't know. One of these days I'll hook up the lines to an oscilloscope and we'll see why. But right now, I don't know. And we have this other flat ribbon cable that connects the front connectors, which has the connectors for the controllers and the memory cards. Take those out. You don't technically have to. You can do the mod without with that in place, but I always take them out. Next I'm going to do is unhook the power cable, and I just tend to tuck that over there. And we have 1, 2, 3 screws to get this metal plate off, which functions A as the mount for the laser, and B to put some RF shielding in place. I don't know if you actually needed it, but they probably needed it for standards compliance. That plate off. And this is the motherboard. If you have an older version of the Sony PlayStation 1, this motherboard is much bigger. But it's only held in place with 2 screws. So we're going to go ahead and take those 2 screws out. You can theoretically do this installation from just the top of the board. But there are a couple of solder points on chip leads that are very hard to get to, and I just like taking everything apart and having just the bare board here. use this guest. And we're gonna search for PsNee. Alright, so what we're gonna look for is the GitHub of the PsNee source. Right, and we're gonna take a look at the PsNee 7 diagram zip, and we're just gonna download that to the computer. Open this up. And I happen to know that the 9001 is a PU23. So we have, they're showing the 9002 here, but there's no difference in the board between the 9001 and 9002. They're both the same generation. My one complaint about the PsNee project is that the resolution on these pictures is not good. Alright, so on any produced board like this, there is a veneer over top of the solder. A lot of people will use a fiberglass pencil in order to get the veneer off. I tend to just use some steel wool. The first point we're looking at is in IC602. There's a big blob there. That's going to be where we're going to grab VCC from. So I'm just going to take some steel wool, just kind of sand off the veneer a little bit, just to make it easier for us to get to. The very first step in modding any console that I always do is I tin the pads that I'm going to need. So I sand them off with the steel wool and then I tin them. And that is very much like this. The reason being is these are reflowed with lead-free solder. If you've done any electronics work for a while, you know lead-free solder kind of sucks. Okay, that's nice and shiny now. We're gonna pull ground from this pad here. Now getting ground to flow is often hard because it's attached to a ground plane, right? So you're gonna have to apply more heat here than you would anywhere else. You can see once I've sanded the thing with the steel wool, the color changes, so you know that the pad is now bare. We saw the solder flow there. I don't know if my new bench camera saw it as well as I hope it does. Alright, so then, according to the diagram, looks like we're going to the top of a resistor. That'll be fun. This is what I meant by in the later models. They worked very hard to make it difficult to modify these consoles. We're going to be soldering to the top of a 0603 resistor, which is always fun. Data line. And now I'm going to use the alternative points for two up here, I think. Let's grab the pads again. These aren't really pads, they're vias, so it's even more fun. Wonder how many people, as they made modding of these more and more difficult, actually completely destroyed their consoles trying. Probably not an insignificant amount. Alright, so I'm going to take some of this wire off so I get fresh stuff after the last bend, just to make sure there's no breaks. The reason I use this fine gauge wire, wrap wire, because it is actually small enough to go into the via. Which provides mechanical support as well as confirmation that you got the right via, the right point. Alright, so I'm going to cut myself off a bunch of this so I don't have to worry about having too little. We'll do the next point. In the newer consoles we look at, there's often software mods that are available. To be honest, I've always preferred a good old hardware mod to a software mod. I don't know why, I just always have. Hardware mods tended to be more reliable. To me, less chance of destroying a console because, well, I know how to solder. But I can understand if people prefer not to do the physical modding after a process of opening your console and soldering to a motherboard. I get it. Okay. If I was doing this mod for somebody else, I would probably hit all of these with a little bit of hot glue just to make sure that there's strain relief on them, and if the people use the console that it doesn't come apart. But since this console was mine and I intend to be the one using it, I'm okay with if it comes loose I can fix it type of a mentality, because I don't abuse my consoles. Go. All right, that is ready to go. So the very next thing that we do is flash the firmware onto our Arduino. And then we're going to go back over to PsNee, back the level. File. This is the same source code that we looked at. It just has all of the extra defines and stuff in it. Alright, so if you're doing this yourself, I assume that you're not going to edit out all the parts that doesn't apply to the specific chip you're using. So that's what I've decided to do with this one here. I apparently copy and pasted just a little too much. So we'll go ahead and get rid of the obviously unnecessary parts. I'm just going to click build to see if it builds as it stands. Alright, so the default compiles. Let's go through and set some flags. I kind of like the idea of the debug, so I can see what's going on. I don't need the PAL BIOS filter or patch. I think that's really the only flags we have. Okay, so compile, and we're going to say upload, and we'll see if we have the TX and RX the right way around. Alright, so now we can take our Arduino here, and the very next thing we're going to do is figure out where all these wires go on the Arduino. And I'm going to put this back into its case so we can figure out where we're going to place the Arduino so that I can do cable management properly. And those are the two that are on the other side of the board are now coming back to the front properly. We'll insert that like that. Okay. And I think I am just going to put the mod chip right here, since there's plenty of extra room inside the console because the original motherboard was much bigger. So if I'm going to go right here, the first one I'm going to connect is ground. And yes, I'll put some insulation in so it's not sitting on the actual metal. Connect ground and VCC through what would normally be an FTDI header. And then let's look at the source code where they give us the wiring diagram. Okay, so SQCK goes to pin 6. So we'll trim that just a touch. Strip a bit of the wire out. Alright, pin 7 is the other one from the bottom of the board. We're going to trim that wire a little short again. Alright. Pin 8 is data. And then pin 9 should obviously be gate. Okay, and then we need to do the VCC and ground. The VCC here. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is put some insulation down where I said I would. That'll do. Again, I would recommend hot gluing the mod chip in place just to be 100% sure. So we're gonna go ahead and plug this guy in. Again, this means that there is 120 volts live on this side. Be very careful, don't be stupid. 120 volts hurts. Grab my AV cable. Pull that out of the way. Turn the PlayStation on, make sure nothing smokes. I didn't connect the wire. Sometimes I'm a genius. Let's give the board some power. Hey, look, the Arduino powers up. Alright, so nothing smoked, which is definitely a good sign. I'm going to turn this off again. Let's watch the screen. See if it actually boots properly. It's not going to go all the way through since it doesn't have a CD-ROM, but looks like it's alive. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and pull the power part out of here again. And we'll start by reassembling this console. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the electrocution risk while I do this. In all honesty, when I bought this console, I kind of got lucky. It's probably the only one that's still in existence that didn't already have a mod chip in it. Okay. I'm just going to set the top on, open it, and we're going to put the legit disc in. Verify that we can still play legit PS1 games. Sometimes the open button is a little sticky when everything is not screwed down. Okay, now we'll watch the screen. And now, backed up disk. I'm going to try and make it so you can see this so you know I'm not cheating. And now it's booting. We'll let the game load a bit.
Today if we hadn't dragged her into this.
Here we have Siphon Filter 3 playing from a backed up disc on a mod chip made with an Arduino. Thank you for joining me in the lab. I hope you learned something today. Lord knows I did. And we will speak again soon.